A huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you Rallycar, Alicia S, and Lame Game Hero for your support. If you are interested in becoming a patron as well, the link is in the description below. Hi everyone, my name is Lena and welcome to my channel. I usually do big hit theory videos if you're new here, so welcome. Today we're going to be examining the GFRIEND storyline, and I'm going to be trying to explain like the story so far because there are rumors of a comeback. So a lot of people have been asking for this video because it is a little confusing. So I did try to put the order of these music videos in chronological order. However, because of the nature of just explaining things, I might jump a little bit from one music video to another and then back again. I also wanted to note that I'm going to be doing a big hit theory like update video, but I'm going to be waiting until after the BTS game comes out, so this doesn't really have any big hit connections in it, like in terms of the overall big hit universe. I chose to only focus on GFRIEND in this video. However, you should totally subscribe if you want to see that big hit connections video in the future. Okay, let's go! So as we learn in the storybook for Labyrinth, these girls were born on an island with glass beads and grew up together. Now this island has a vast and interesting history filled with magic and destruction, but I do feel like they grew up pretty normally despite the history that we have yet to discover at this point in the story. Throughout several of their early music videos, such as Glass Bead and Me Gustas Tu, we see their life as teenagers as they attend school and traverse their friendships. However, somewhere around Love Whisper, this starts to change. The music video shows them hearing something, some sort of call, which they are able to follow to a tree, which seems to be the source of the sound. A butterfly, which is blue, which is not the blue butterfly, but it does seem to have like mystical powers or like somehow knows about other things because it definitely leads them places and kind of follows Una in the storybook as well. This butterfly flies away in response to their presence. But the part that I want to focus on is actually the sound that they were following. Now we know because of the butterfly effect video that the apple tree kind of sings to them, and I'm not entirely sure if this is the apple tree. I am leaning towards no, and I do think that the sound that they're hearing at this point in time, this early on in the storyline, is actually a reflection of their friendships, which at the current moment is that of love and trust. This is very important because I don't think that this song or sound that they're hearing actually changes. I think it just mimics this sound of love and trust that they've come to associate with each other, and that's why Una falls for the apple tree later on. Basically, there's like a darker mimic later on. According to the storybook, once again, a lake in the village, not the tree, but like a lake somewhere, which maybe is near the tree, gifted these girls small magical abilities, given to one girl at a time, likely starting with Soan and ending with Una. This whole situation causes the girls to become jealous of each other and presumably fight, and then the book ends with Una walking away, a shadow holding a glass bead behind her, and having her wonder if the magic was truly only a gift. We will come back to this, but if you do want to read the translations, I will have the link for the storybook in the description below. My current best guess for what their powers were that they got from this lake are, for Soan, we don't actually see a lot of her powers. I do think Soan's original ability, as shown in the video, might be looking into a glass bead and seeing things in it, kind of like scrying, but it's hard to tell if this is a specific ability for her or if it's something with the glass beads. Likewise, I do wonder if maybe Una steals this ability from her, because when Una is with the bookstore owner, we see her in her glass bead, so I wonder if it's like the glass bead shows themselves just in general, like if you possess someone's glass bead, you might be able to see through the glass bead and see them, or it's a specific ability that Una maybe took from Soan, which is why we start to see a shadow associated with her. I do think Soan is able to communicate through shadows, maybe communicating with them or being able to control or see through them. I'll get more into her in the future because there's just a lot to unpack with Soan specifically. Interestingly, there's a line in the Labyrinth song that says, "The shadow following me tries to swallow me by shouting out." But like I said, we're gonna get into that later. Yerin. In the fingertip music video, we see her controlling what looks like water to me, but she's also shown looking at her sleeping self, so I do wonder if it's specifically related to sleep and dreams and they just kind of chose to use this water animation to depict it. After all, in Apple, she wakes up from sleeping in the labyrinth garden. But that is not all. Hear me out for a minute. She is also able to control and animate stuffed animals. I hear what you're saying, you're yelling at me about Eunji, but Eunji definitely is the one who has stuffed animals in the fingertip music video, but I don't think that's Eunji's power. She's kind of like locking animals up in that music video. She's putting them in cages, which is very strange. And there's also a scene where Yerin and Shinbi are looking at Una through the eyes of a stuffed animal in that video as well. So here's my hypothesis. Yerin, like a couple of the other girls, might have two abilities. And in fact, her first most prominent ability did have to do with stuffed animals. Think about it. We see her with stuffed animals in a lot of music videos, Navalera, for example. And in Rough, where the bear kind of is like reaching out for her and stuff like that, where it's like specifically associated with her and not with Eunji. I also hear you guys saying, but wait, in the storybook, Eunji is the one holding the teddy bear. In this page in the storybook, this is them fighting. It even tells you right away that this is them fighting. Una is kind of like reaching out to her friends because they're fighting. Yuju has clearly fallen and her knees are hurt. So-on's in the middle with her shadow, just chilling out. You know, we're not gonna worry about So-on right now. And then of course these three on the side have been fighting amongst each other. Yerin's holding something behind her back, which kind of looks like her ability in fingertip, but could also be Shinbi's, as if she took Shinbi's and is hiding it, because we do know Yerin and Shinbi are on the same team in fingertip. So I think that Eunji took her bear, Shinbi and Eunji were fighting with each other, and Shinbi took the arm off of the bear. Anyways, I do think that this like ability with the bear is very important to the story, and I do think that it belongs specifically to Yerin, not to Eunji. Una. Now, I do think that Una's specific ability is being able to draw doors or pass through them into a different place, kind of like we see in fingertip, but I feel like there might be strong limitations to this ability. She cannot just go anywhere. In fingertip, she ends up in a room where her friends had just been, so I wonder if it might be tied to knowing people or something like that. And the ability to time travel is not her own ability, but it comes from the blue butterflies, which we will cover in more detail as we get there. Likewise, as I mentioned before, I do wonder if she maybe took the ability to see through the glass bead from So-on, or if it's a product of the glass bead itself. It is very unclear to me, but I am personally kind of leaning towards the idea that she stole that power from So-on, but we haven't really seen that happen directly. And if it is, then we definitely have some sort of proof through fingertip that Una now has that ability. Either that or she is currently holding Shinbi's like glass bead. So Yuju. Yuju's ability is strongly related to mirrors. In fingertip, we see her reflection get trapped, and I do think that it is actually her who gets trapped in the mirror / labyrinth, and I think her likeness was taken by a siren, and this siren is kind of trying to trick others to get trapped in the labyrinth as well, I feel. I will also get into this in more detail later because it has a lot to do with the storyline, especially further in. Just keep that as a possibility that quite early on, she switched places with her siren. Shinbi. Now, I'm most confused about Shinbi's powers. In the fingertip music video, when she's holding a glass bead, it shows a flower surrounded by fire. Both of these could be related to Apple, where of course flowers seem to be quite important. But even more so is towards the ending when she's dancing in front of the apple tree. It is on fire, so that makes me wonder if, for whatever reason, the fire is actually her doing. So as it stands right now, fire being connected to her abilities somehow makes sense to me, but let me know what you think about that one, because I do think there could be more to it. Eunji. As we see in fingertip, Eunji does seem to be able to project herself from outside of her body, so she, for some reason, could possibly be in maybe 2 places at once. Alternatively, it is very possible that it has something to do with her airplanes because we see them kind of all over the place, so she might be able to see the future or something like that. But Eunji is a big ol' question mark. But yeah, that's kind of all I have on her. Honestly, the strangest thing here is that we barely ever see the girls actually using their powers. In fact, I think Yerin's is probably the one we see most with the stuffed animals moving and stuff like that. And as we continue on, you will understand why this particular power being shown the most is very, very strange. So let's continue on. We are told that these powers, although they're cute, start to cause envy to grow in the group. In the video, The Tale of the Glass Bead, previous story, Una recounts that she wonders if the powers were truly a gift. My interpretation of this is that they were actually cursed by a witch, or someone who stands to gain something from their fighting. And there's a couple suspects for that. Our main character, which is Una, starts to display this envy quite early on. And she seems to kind of want the powers that other people have because they seem more interesting than her own. These powers are represented by the glass beads, as I mentioned before, which is ironic because that is the song title of their debut song, which is really cute, so adorable. In Navalera, she seems to end up quite close to Yeren, yet there are several scenes where she's observing kind of strangely. Plus, there's this really interesting scene where she surrounds Yeren with stuffed animals, almost like a magic circle or something. It makes me wonder if she was trying to steal her glass bead or ability here. It's unclear if she's completely successful or not though. I am kind of leaning towards the not side just because I haven't seen Una really use this ability at all, and Fingertip almost solidifies that for me, but let me know what you think. This leads into more music videos like Rough, where they are trying to remain friends even though they are separated by things such as their graduation. But they are trying to stay together as friends and remind each other why they were so close together in the early music videos. I also think Summer Rain happens around here, where they're also just kind of left dissatisfied with their friendships and let each other down, and just in general it shows that separation. After this, their relationships become very tumultuous. Una, as shown in the second storybook, sees their friendship falling apart and once again hears someone tell her about the blue butterflies. Now, the book does tell us that she wants to save her friends, but I do wonder if she had an ulterior motive of maybe collecting more glass beads, but I'll get into that in a little bit because there's a couple different angles on this. After traveling quite a distance, she meets the owner of the old bookstore, who is for some reason the keeper of these mysterious blue butterflies. Weird. And he tells her that they were previously misused for evil reasons and thus they disappeared, waiting for someone who can use their power. He then conveniently lets Una know that looking at her glass bead, she should be able to harness the power of the blue butterflies to turn back time and save her friends. It should be noted that he doesn't seem to be able to use the butterflies himself, which makes him just generally suspicious. Why is he helping this random girl that came to his door? He does, though, give her a warning that every single time that she uses a butterfly, her glass bead will darken. When it turns completely black, something will happen that she might not be able to handle. However, she simply replies that she will do anything to save her friends. Then she takes the butterflies and leaves. The final page of this second book shows her walking away through the window, while the bookstore owner once again answers the door. I see the next girl has arrived. The girl at the door is So-on, the same one who got the power first. Let's just talk a little bit more about So-on now, shall we? So So-on was the first girl to be gifted a power by the lake. And as we saw in the first book, it might have been related to the glass bead, or maybe the powers within the glass bead. Regardless, she also has that weird thing with her shadow going on. And I think that's especially important because as everyone else got her own power, her feeling special would fade. She no longer is the only one with a power. Everyone else has one too. So her own powers just generally became less important. So while Una is the one who kind of displays her jealousy early on and is telling the story from how they all became jealous of each other, I do think it is So-on who has the most jealousy in the group, but quietly, literally from the shadows. In fact, a dark shadow, a witch specifically, is seen behind Una in the last page of that first storybook. Is that So-on? Also, it says that someone whispers to Una about the legend of the blue butterflies. Just someone murmurs it to her. Was it from the shadows? Was that actually So-on telling Una to go here? Is So-on gaining something from Una being able to time travel? Or is she somehow connected to the bookstore owner? And if so, what's up with that? We have yet to see. Anyway, let's continue. I think that after Una returns from getting the butterflies, the events of Fingertip happen. Her friends' fight escalates to crazy degrees. In the Fingertip music video, it seems that it is the group of Eunji, Sowon, and Yuju versus Shinbi and Yerin, and Una's just kind of off on her own chasing butterflies, trying to turn back time and stop them from fighting, basically. She releases a butterfly in order to reverse it all, leading to the end of the music video where her friends are there to wake her up, seemingly not seen fighting. This is her first use of the butterfly, 1 out of 5, but none of her problems were actually solved. She just reversed back time. So things get bad again. I think it's around here that Time for the Moon Night happens. This music video is a bit confusing, but I did want to give you what I kind of think is happening here. So I do think that this music video shows 3 different time periods. The past, where they're all happy together and where they found the abandoned room in that building and made a little hideout. The future, where everyone is separated, and this is where Shinbi finds Una sleeping on the bed on her own, and I assume this is the timeline also where the apple tree was cut down. And then finally, there's an ending scene where they're in a field together, most likely after a rewind, which explains why Una kind of looks so out of it. She knows that while they're together in that moment, they will inevitably break apart. So that's why there's all these different parallels with the different times and the room and like switching back and forth. That's just my interpretation right now though. It might change when we get more information in the future, but I do think that that makes a lot of sense if there's like different timelines. The future can change, but for the moment, that's kind of how I'm interpreting this music video. Anyways, she reverses time, ends up once again on the rooftop. Here she's cornered by Shinbi and Yerin, and she watches yet again as Shinbi accidentally takes out Yerin. She falls off, and then we resume in Crossroads. This time, however, she wakes up alone, and we see she only has 3 butterflies left in her box. Her bead has already darkened significantly. I feel like her frustration is actually growing at this point. She can't seem to fix her friend's problems, and she knows that Shinbi will inevitably be the one to take out Yerin, someone who she's friends with. So that's why they're fighting in this music video. She is taking out her frustration for Shinbi's future actions on her without Shinbi understanding why, because of course that's in the future. It hasn't actually happened yet, but it happened for Una. Likewise, there is Eunji and Yuju, who's probably the mirror Yuju at this point, and they are fighting. This does seem to parallel Shinbi and Una's fighting as well. Now, considering they're on the same team in Fingertip the first time around, this is a bit of an interesting development. It's something different, because Eunji does try to fix their friendship. She reaches out at the aquarium and Yuju declines. I do think that contrary to Yuju and Eunji fighting, Una and Shinbi do kind of make up a little bit, or at least they aren't fighting at the same point, because we do see Una go and try to apologize. Also, I do want to say that in that scene, Shinbi is talking to Sowon, which I just find very interesting because of what we know about Sowon and the whole shadow thing. It's just a very interesting choice. Now, Crossroads seem to cover the span of several different music videos. Her eyes, as she travels through time, do tend to lighten. This leads me to believe that Memoria actually happens kind of in between these time rewinds that are happening. And in the Crossroads music video, they do go from brown to dark blue to a green, and then end up on kind of like an icy blue gray shade. And this actually explains her shift in the tail of the glass bead butterfly effect. It first shows her similar to Fingertip's second rewind, dark eyes and hair to whatever era this is meant to be. I honestly could not figure it out. It kind of looks like Time for the Moon Night hair, which I guess would make sense in this like context, but the outfit doesn't look like anything we've ever really seen before, so it's possible that we're gonna get a music video with that outfit in the future. But then at the end, she is just inexplicably changed to blonde hair and those icy blue eyes, just in time for the Apple music video. Before we get any further, I did want to mention that Sunrise could actually be a reversed timeline as well, somewhere in this time period. Generally, this is based on the ending where we do see time reverse itself. I'm not sure where this rewind happens exactly. Probably somewhere near the beginning, but I'm not entirely sure. It also might connect to the idea of the labyrinth because of the forest that we're seeing, and it looks similar to the butterfly effect video, which means that Una's parts with the piano might happen in the labyrinth, but that's just a guess. Sunrise is kind of their most confusing music video. It's the one I get the least, so I apologize. I just know that it is at least a rewind because of that ending. I don't know how to describe what's happening in it necessarily, but I do know that they rewind time. Wish that I could describe everything, but I honestly have zero ideas. Speaking of Labyrinth though, let's talk about Apple. The Apple music video. I think that this is where everyone starts to show their true colors. To us, the audience, not to Una, because I think Una kind of already knows at this point. Now, what I'm about to cover, they've actually been subtly hinting at and showing us through different timelines and music videos all the way from the beginning. And once you know what you're looking for, they become a lot more obvious when you're watching stuff as well. So what are we looking for? Well, lucky for us, they provided some very telling photos with the Song of the Sirens album. We get the girls here with important objects to them being weighed against each other on a scale. These are often objects that we have seen already and can be related directly to the storyline. So let's go over them. So-on. She has a diary on one side and it is pretty on par with Jules. The diary is the same one that we see in music videos like Rough and Sunrise, and in terms of storyline, they wrote this together when they were younger, so we know that her memories are important to her. The jewels, however, are a lot more subtle. They're in Sunny Summer, and they're all over the floor for So-on and Fallen Light. But it's hard to know exactly what they symbolize. Wealth? Status? In Crossroads, she looks very well dressed while she is being driven somewhere. Does her economical status come into play with her? It seems like both of these things are equally important to her, both this status symbol and, of course, her memories with her friends. But this balance is quite precarious because it doesn't take much to tip the scale. Yeren. For her, money weighs heavier than a stuffed bear. Now the bear is obviously a reference to her power, as I mentioned before, and this is something that she doesn't seem to care very much about. Remember I said it was weird that we see her power a lot? It is, right? She doesn't seem to care very much about her power, at least not nearly as much as money. As I mentioned, it does appear that So-on might have like more money than average, so I do wonder like if there's some sort of dynamic between Yeren and So-on in that front. But we haven't really seen Yeren be particularly focused on money so far. But I have a ton of her using the power, so that's weird. I think it's very possible that we haven't actually seen the impact that money has on Yeren yet, and that is something that will probably pop up in the future, so make sure you look out for that. For Una, there is a glass bead that is heavier than a butterfly. This is probably not too surprising. Up till this point, Una has had a lot of glass beads, especially in music videos like Fingertip and Fallen Light. This would lead you to believe that she values the glass beads and the power over her friendship, because she doesn't really care about rewinding time nearly as much as she cares about collecting the glass beads. Which makes you think, well then, didn't she lie to the bookshop owner? Hold up a minute. There's one image that I want you to just sit with and digest for a little while. This image where she seems to be trying to make the butterfly weigh more than the bead. It's possible that Una's desire for these beads isn't as clear-cut as we once thought. She might not want to necessarily only care about these beads. She might be trying to change. Yuju. Baby's breath heavier than an expensive shoe. First, this flower we've seen a couple of times. We saw it a lot in the Love Whisper music video back in the beginning, so that could refer to her friendship and memories. But she's also seen taking these flowers to what I believe is the remnants of the apple tree in Time for the Moon Knight, which makes me wonder if this is Siren Yuju upset at the loss of the tree or not. Could also be a double meaning to refer to real and Siren Yuju, and they just were very clever about it because that could work. The shoe, however, is a lot more confusing. At no point does Yuju ever really seem to wear a shoe like this, and if she does, it's definitely not that sparkly. However, her character does seem to have a love for dance, as we see in Rough, but the sparkles are really confusing. Una wears a similar shoe style when she falls off of the rooftop, but once again, we're missing the sparkles. You know what it does kind of look like though? The Wizard of Oz, specifically the red sparkly shoes at the end of the movie where she taps it to return home. The only thing that's missing here is the red color. But like, isn't Dorothy trapped in the Land of Oz and she has to get out? And wait, doesn't she fight with a witch? Is this a sign that Yuju really is trapped within the labyrinth within the mirror world? Shinbi, the flashlight, being only slightly heavier than trophies. Now this flashlight is most likely from Time for the Moon Night, where she tries to find Una in the field. To me, this makes me feel like she cares more about what's going on with Una than any of her own personal achievements. But if we do look at Navalera, we see these trophies are quite important to her. She really likes trophies and winning. Would she be willing to lose if it meant fixing her relationship with Una and the others? Unji, an apple on par with paper airplanes. The apple is obviously from the Apple music video, but why? To be honest, Unji had a very small role in the Apple music video, and yet here it's kind of shown that she cares very much about apples. Could this be because they are actually important to Una? Remember, Una sees the apples as glass beads, and Unji kind of mirrors her a little bit. Now, these paper airplanes are from a couple different music videos, like Sunrise and Time for the Moon Night. There's honestly a lot of speculation about these airplanes and not a lot of fact. We do know that she drew an apple tree on one of these airplanes in Time for the Moon Night, along with other cryptic messages, but she does have a deep attachment to them. Clearly, since they're literally all over her timeline. We have yet to clearly know why. And what does it mean that this apple seems to be just as important to her as these airplanes, which we've literally seen with her everywhere? Unji, please! So now that we've taken a look at all of that, let's continue the storyline. So like I said before, Apple probably happens in the labyrinth. The tree is within their labyrinth that they're running through. They're probably in the center of it. I do actually have a whole video breaking down this music video, and if you want to watch that, you can click the card or it's in the description below, but I'm obviously going to briefly go over it here now. So Una bites the temptation, which is the apple, and it seems to represent the glass bead to her. If we remember everyone's desires, we can kind of assume that the temptation in this case are their desires. These desires are what takes her to the center of the labyrinth and the call that is calling out to her. There, she is pulled into the building by none other than Soan. Remember, she had a witch for a shadow behind Una, similar to what they likely turn into at the end, and Soan was the one who followed her in the bookstore. Inside the building, we see Una's scale tip in favor of the flowers in the room, completely removing the butterflies, the chance to save her friends, from the equation altogether. Meanwhile, Yeren, who seems to put very little stock in her actual power, wakes up further outside, somewhere in the garden of the labyrinth, and then the door gets closed in her face. I should note that there does seem to be two Yerens in this music video, but going off the fact that there are two Yujus and that Unji can kind of project herself outwardly, I feel like the possibility of there being two Yerens is very plausible. We see Shinbi dancing in front of the tree on fire, which puts that as her element. The tree does seem to set fire based on their ritual, but it's hard to tell if this was the creepy haircutting or maybe if one of the girls set fire to it, like Shinbi. Because Shinbi represents fire, at the end we see Soan on the throne looking quite icy, and thus Shinbi is framed as her opposite. Fire to ice, red to blue, light to dark. Let's remember Fingertip really quickly. Who was against who again? It was Shinbi and Yeren versus Soan, Yuju, and Unji. Now it seems at the end of Apple that Unha has joined Soan, Unji, and Yuju. But remember the tipping of the scales here? Did she actually really want to, or was she compelled to? Was she simply enchanted by the Song of the Sirens? Interestingly, there is a concept photo of Una where she is covering her ears. And also, where does Umji fit into this equation? Because we know that Umji and Yuju were fighting before this. Not sure if they're still on the same side or not, or if Umji's kind of on her own now. Now, in the lyrics for the song Labyrinth, it talks about being tempted by a sweet noise. This is likely the same sound as the butterfly effect video. And Shinbi is singing how she doesn't want to hear it, along with Soan. However, Soan is swayed by Yuju, insisting that she look into the mirror and listen to her, along with the line, "Don't close your ears." Although, later she sings, "I'm lost in the maze, don't listen to the shining fake." Is she referring to herself? Don't listen to her fake self, or possibly even the light leading you somewhere into the maze, deeper into the maze, because it's trying to trap you. This light is visible in the butterfly effect video in the distance, and it's also visible right on top of them at the end of Apple. Remember, I think that Yuju is not the original Yuju. We see the original Yuju get trapped in Fingertip and is the one running by herself around the school in the Crossroads music video. Una also sings, "The darkness that endlessly came to me blaze up like a flame." So maybe Shinbi actually burns down the apple tree in order to save Unha, to blaze away the darkness, the shadows surrounding her. This song, for the most part, sees them wanting to break free from the labyrinth, to block out the siren's songs, but ultimately sees some of them drawn into the darkness regardless. Break it now, get out now. This is one of Yuju's lines, and this is kind of signifying that they really do need to get out before they are trapped by temptation. Now, I don't particularly think that there has been anything that is released so far that is actually past this point in the story. Time for the Moonlight might show an alternate timeline with the dead tree, but like I mentioned, that does kind of feel more like a music video with a rewind in it. Hello, this is Lena from the future. I'm editing right now and stuff just got dropped for GFRIEND on Weverse. We got another photo book, and in that photo book we got some very unique images. These images seem to be based off of the tarot card song, which is one of the songs being released on the Japanese comeback that's coming next month. And, well, these images are very interesting to me because several of them seem to be mirroring real tarot cards. First, Soan is mirroring Temperance. This one is pretty spot on. I feel like it's fairly non-negotiable that she is Temperance. There's literally nothing else that she could possibly be. The meaning of the Temperance tarot card indicates that you should learn to bring balance, patience, and moderation in your life. You should take the middle road, avoiding extremes and maintaining a sense of calm. It's probably best for Soan if she doesn't choose one side or the other, but we know that that's not necessarily what's happened here. Yerin is the Chariot because she's got the two different chess pieces that are black and white, exactly like the Chariot. The Chariot is a card about overcoming conflicts and moving forward in a positive direction. You need to keep going through hard work and commitment to be victorious. I feel like this really suits Yerin's story so far, assuming that she needs to overcome obstacles and continue on her journey. That's kind of what we were just talking about, so I'm excited to see where this is gonna go. Also, her eyes are two different colors here. One is gray and one is brown. Now, if you remember Memoria, this happens to Una, and I do think it has to do with time travel. And we did see that she followed a blue butterfly to the door of the labyrinth. So I wonder if she's going to actually be reversing time as well, in which case this is about to get very messy. Especially because we do see Yuju with blue butterflies as well. How many girls will be able to go back in time? Shinbi could probably be strength, if you imagine that the cat is a lion. Strength predicts the triumphant conclusion to major life problems, situations, or temptations through the strength of character. It's a very happy card if you are fighting illness or recovering from an injury. I do find it interesting that the strength here is actually depicted as being the cat, like the same cat from the BTS universe and the TXT universe that I always talk about. Oh my god. Also, the cat being here is very interesting to me. Why is the cat here? Is it because she is showing the strength to literally tame the lion that is the cat? I really want to see what's going to happen with this. Kind of looks like she could be Justice, but instead of holding scales, she's holding a cup. The sword and cup are actually both their own categories when it comes to tarot. The minor arcana of the sword does tend to focus on the intellect and conflict in a person's situation, and the cup tends to focus on emotions and relationships. Regardless, the Justice tarot card indicates that the fairest decision will be made. So Justice is the sword that cuts through the situation and will not be swayed by outer beauty when deciding what is fair and just. So it's kind of a sense of balance. And I guess if we look at Umji's role, she's not really on either side right now. She's kind of on her own side. And so she might not be swayed by the singing of the siren, and thus will somehow balance it out. I don't know though, that's just my current interpretation. And like I said, those scales were actually replaced with a cup, so it could be a little bit different. I do find it interesting that the original Justice is holding scales though, considering we just had a whole photo set with a bunch of scales. Is that a coincidence? Or, however, besides Justice, a lot of people have interpreted this card to actually be the Magician. The Magician card, though, usually has all four of the suits: the wand, the cup, the sword, and the coins, but for some reason she only has two, so I wasn't sure if that was really meant to be the Magician or not. I will admit the flower border does look mostly like the Magician, but I feel like I can't ignore the fact that if she is the Magician, she is incomplete right now. She only has two parts of it. The message of the Magician is to tap into one's full potential rather than holding back, especially when there is a need to transform something. This also really works with Umji's story arc. But like I said, if she's the Magician, she's not actually there yet. She still hasn't reached that completion. And now finally, Yuju and Una. Now, both of these girls are actually holding tarot cards. Well, Yuju is holding tarot cards. And I think this tells you their stance on the cards themselves. Here it seems like Yuju is reading the cards and embracing it, where Una is rejecting the idea of the cards. Interestingly, in the actual lyrics for the tarot card song, Una and Yuju have some back and forth lines. It goes, "All the vague questions, whispers to me one by one, sweet voices, trembling footsteps. Go ahead. Destiny that will change every time. I reshuffle and flip. I find my own answer." This whole paragraph actually sounds like kind of what Una was going through, but if you look at the last two lines, "Destiny that will change every time I reshuffle and flip," that is sung by Yuju. And the line, "I find my own answer," is sung by Una. This kind of matches these pictures as well. Is Yuju maybe finding a way to control the cards and to use them to her advantage? This might be Siren Yuju that we're seeing, so do we trust the cards or not? Anyways, back to our regular scheduled programming. So let's just do some recaps on the characters here. Una was originally selfish and wanted the glass beads for herself. She has 2, maybe 1 butterfly left, although if she actually did release all of the butterflies at the end of Apple, then I guess she doesn't have any, and we will soon see the consequences of using all of her butterflies, since her glass bead will probably be completely black at this point. And that might even be the reason why they have horns at the end of the video, although I'm not entirely sure on that, that's just a guess. Eunji has intense jealousy for Una, to the point that she's imitating her. Even her 2 objects together seem to match Una's in terms of weight. Her apple is like Una's glass bead, and her paper planes are like that of the butterflies. She plays piano like Una, pieces together the same song that Una's playing. Her jealousy is even deeply highlighted in the last 2 comebacks, with a dark shot at the end of Crossroads and in the concept photos where she's seen glaring at Una's scale. This is the only photo of its sort. So not so much of her role has been revealed, but we do know that she is fighting with Yuju, who is possibly the fake Yuju. So speaking of Yuju, she has been trapped in the mirror or labyrinth world, and this has happened for a while. In fact, I do think she can see rewinds from where she is as well. Why else is she running so much in the Crossroads music video? What is she trying to prevent? Meanwhile, her siren counterpart is dragging others into the same situation and seems more focused on dark magic. So-on may have had her scrying ability stolen from her by Unha, but she also seems to be able to control shadows. Yet she does say, "The shadow following me tries to swallow me by shouting out," which might imply this is actually her envy, possibly manifesting because she's upset or jealous. It's hard to tell how much control she actually has over shadows, and she may have plotted against her friends, but to a degree seems to be influenced by her shadow and Yuju's mirror witch to do so. Shinbi is the one closest to Una, and personally I think she's the one most invested in actually saving Una. She seems to be the one who's most actively fighting against the dark, quite literally with fire. Finally, Yeren. Yeren seems drawn to wealth and money, but her lack of interest in her own power basically means that she's taken a more neutral stance on the whole thing, and it also means that she kind of ended up outside of the center of the labyrinth, and thus the doors were closed in her face. I really think that this means that she could be the one to sort of tip the scales in their favor, especially if she pairs up with Shinbi, which if we think of fingertip, we know that they do anyways, but I do feel like she in particular is going to be the one who makes the most difference between the whole dark witch, light witch situation and freeing them from the center of the labyrinth where they're kind of trapped right now. And that's it. That's all I've got for you right now. What did you think? Now, there are rumors that GFRIEND is having a comeback before the end of the year, so there's a chance that we're gonna get some more answers really soon, and I'm very excited for that. I'm looking forward to it, but of course right now we don't have any of these answers. It kind of just ends on like a big question mark right now. Like, we don't actually know exactly where this is gonna go. They haven't really revealed to a full extent what this darkness caused by the butterflies actually do. We don't know how the bookstore owner is going to tie into this. We're not sure if So-on actually plotted against her friends or not, basically. So I'm really interested in getting these answers. But if you did like today's video and found it useful, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe and click the bell so that you're notified every single time that I post a new video. Reminder, I actually have a Discord and there's a lot of fun theory channels on there. We play games every now and then together. You should definitely go check it out. It is linked in the description. And I have a Patreon which has a lot of fun content such as access to my scripts, exclusive vlogs, behind the scenes content. If you like my videos, consider dropping by and supporting me there. As it is, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely day. Stay sunny, everyone. Bye!